People ignore this. Here's what they should be doing. And you may not like what comes next, but it's how the money works. They should be doing production rationalization, doing back office stuff. If a manufacturer buys another, one of the things few people do that they need to is you take all product development efforts and you put it under the CEO directly. Because when there's an old saying about engineers, you can always tell an engineer, you just can't tell them much. And if you have two companies, they both have product development, they both have investments in R&D, some percentage of sales, you put it under the CEO because none of these guys play well together. And it ends up being a very destructive competition. You improve the supply chain, work on working capital, upgrade duplicate staff, and never say nothing's going to change. How many times have you heard that in this industry? Oh yeah, we're going to buy, oh no, we're going to keep two completely separate sales forces forever. Why would we ever combine them? I put this in red because it's really important. And I'm going to show you how this is supposed to work and then how it actually does. One manufacturer buys another in a channel-intensive business like this one. They need to promptly rationalize the distribution channel partners based on economics, not favoritism. Economics, not favoritism. It's rare. Before that happens, they have to rationalize their combined sales organization and put the best people in charge. And typically that's not how it goes down. So this is a real case study. You can plug in whatever names you want. The names would be familiar to you. Manufacturer A had a bunch of distributors. My client was a distributor of manufacturer B. And so you had two manufacturers. No distributor could have both A and B. Nobody shared shelf space. It was an either or deal. You plug it in. A bought B and then went out and told the distributors, we're going to have a trial by fire. May the best company win. What we want you to do is we want you to show how well you're aligned with our strategy, and we want to see what kind of growth you can generate for us. And the guy that does the best job, you're going to get the line. Now, since most distributors are sales oriented, isn't this kind of like, yeah, game on, Batman, let's play. So what did my client do? They spent tons of money, added all kinds of product specialists, sales staff, customer creation events. They did all kinds of stuff, and their growth went just like, it was like a rocket. They spent money like drunken sailors, generated tons of growth. At the end of the period, manufacturer A terminated them and virtually all the other distributors. My client sued. They spent $600,000 of their own money in arbitration, and they lost. They categorically proved that manufacturer A lied. There is no justice in the world. It's all about the money. And it's all about contracts and obligations. And so if you're trying to figure out if one of your major suppliers gets bought by somebody else, what do? We're going to talk about scenarios and black swans. A guy named Nassim Taleb wrote a book called The Black Swan. And these are about long-tail risks, things that people don't consider. And a black swan is an event that nobody thinks is possible, ever. It don't even bring it up. It's just silly to even think about it until it actually occurs, and then everybody goes, well, gosh, I guess that's obvious. Why didn't we see that coming? There was no such thing as a black swan until 1823. Up until then, every swan was white. Until somebody went to Australia and saw a black swan. And then it was like, holy crap, Batman. I guess there's black swans. And then it becomes obvious. 9/11, everybody here remembers where they were, don't you? 9/11 was a black swan. It was inconceivable in the beginning, but after it happens, then who's at fault? Why did we miss it? All the the kind of things we do. Anybody remember this? Captain Sullivan? U.S. Air flight going down the Hudson. By the way, I'd like to make a point here. See all these people standing on the wing? Those are the coach passengers standing in the ice water. All the first class people are on rafts. Just saying. after that came out, there's a new cocktail out called the Sully. It's 2 shots of Grey Goose and a splash of water. And the lesson you should take from this, from the new movie that's out with Tom Hanks, never go anywhere with Tom Hanks. He's done Apollo 13. He did the deal with the FedEx plane and the little soccer ball he made friends with. I mean, everywhere, if I get on a plane and he's there, I'm going to turn around and just get off. Now, this seemed impossible. If you talk about distribution, a bell curve, sigma is what the shape of the curve is. And basically, if you go from here to here, 99.73% of all events, if you're into Six Sigma, this is very familiar, occur within this band. If airline safety worked at this level, there'd be about 100 airplane crashes every day. And you'd be slightly nervous about going back to the Orlando airport. Why am I talking about this? How do you know what's going to happen to you if your largest supplier gets acquired? If it happens, do not mourn the old world. Do not talk about justice. Do not talk about loyalty. The dumbest thing you can say is, we have had a strong relationship with you guys for 57 years. Look at the chart. That's how they evaluate you, if it's performance. The first thing you have to determine is, does performance matter? Are they going to do this by favoritism, like the blind case study I just shared with you, or are they going to do it by performance? If they're doing it by favoritism, and you've got compromising photos on a senior VP of sales, you're good. Help them move it ahead. If it's going to be on performance and you're good, and you've got really good numbers and good growth, and you fit this chart, you're in the left-hand side of this chart, go ahead and help. If not, plan your exit. Relationship and value of that relationship does not show up in this chart. When a manufacturer is deciding which distributors to keep, and everybody's going to do a slightly different deal, this is a generic chart. What is your growth rate on the bell curve? Do you have a lot of good, well, we were invested in oil and gas and things are just really tough for us and we need some extra dating to get through? Or are you a top quartile? How much whining do you do? Is stock rotation how you do inventory control? Right? You're always begging for help. You need to help us do more training. Do you do little? Price whining in particular. You negotiate everything and everything's just terrible and the prices aren't competitive. Notice this. If you're a small distributor, this is really important. A manufacturer has essentially a minimum fixed cost to manage a distributor relationship. If it's a single distributor per APR or limited distribution, it's a lot higher than if it's open. But they might have to do business planning with you. They might have quarterly business reviews. They have a sales guy that's calling on you. So even if you're a small distributor, and just say it costs them 60 grand, even if it's a small distributor, that's the minimum they can spend. They can save a lot of money by getting rid of some small distributors, can't they? Because it doesn't matter how big you are. This is largely independent of size. These last two things are really important. This one down here, they support your entire package. Speaking as a manufacturer, do you sell my whole line? Look at the giant guys. The really big guys, aren't they masters at this? All right, we have private label products, we got intergalactic this, that, and the other. Are you very aligned? If you're over here on this side and it's being done on performance, you're going to do well. Most are done on favoritism, not performance. I'm sorry, that's just my experience. Now, anybody remember this character? There's one ace in the hole you have as a distributor. Remember I talked about 1 + 1 = 1.5? In any manufacturer acquisition of another, there's always erosion in sales. They need to hang on to sales. If you have strength with your customers, you have large customers and a channel-led business, and you go to that manufacturer and you say, by the way, these big customers that buy a lot of your stuff, they chose me over you, and if I don't end up with this line, I've already made arrangements and you're going to lose all this revenue, and the manufacturers in a lot of cases will just roll right over it because what they have to preserve at all costs is revenue of the combination. If you have a customer that will talk directly to a supplier and tell them that, you're in a whole different situation. It's a major, major deal. So let's talk about scenarios. You may not remember, but during Desert Storm 2, we found a bunch of gold in one of Saddam's palaces. And my daughter, who was a company commander in the military police, their job was to pick up all this gold and take it back to what was going to become the green zone. It wasn't quite the green zone yet. They put together scenarios saying, how are we going to be attacked? And they sort of mapped all this stuff out about what they were going to do. And sure enough, there was a pretty coordinated attack against our convoys. They loaded up all this gold going back. But here's what happened. This is very important. The reason you do a scenario is to improve the outcome of any major disruption. What you say, just suppose X happens. They said, suppose we get attacked. You go to your field salespeople and you say, just suppose you lost your largest customer. Oh, it's not going to happen, man. I'm all over these guys. They're good. They're solid. No, just suppose. It's not going to happen. Well, just suppose it actually does. You'd have to give me the guarantee. I'd have no money. So you say, just suppose. There's two things. How do you recognize it quickly? And by recognizing it while everybody else is panicked, you execute violently to optimize your outcome. What happened with my daughter, as soon as that happened, instead of people being freaked out, it was something they'd actually spent 2 hours with planning before they did it, and they knew exactly what to do with overlapping fields of fire and everything else. So they recognized it quickly instead of that shock, and they reacted very, very quickly. Simple example. Your largest supplier gets acquired. You go through the analysis, you say, I'm not looking real good on this. They're going to probably get rid of me. The very day it's announced, you have some leverage that you can go to a competing supplier and say, look, they've told me that they're going to keep me. I've been right on the verge of dumping these guys all along, and we've been thinking about talking to you, and this is the straw that broke the camel's back. And I want to talk to you about moving all of my business over and stop them and just cut them off cold and substitute you. Let's put a program together. I'm going to need some dating. I'm going to need some help. Let's go in there and let's just knock them out. You have that leverage in the beginning. Every day that goes by, you lose leverage to the point that when they terminate you, you're just a begging, whining distributor. How do you recognize something early, and how do you figure out in advance what do you do? So here's how you figure out, do I do a scenario or not? Will taxes rise over the next several years? Hello? Yeah. Is there much uncertainty with that? No, we don't like the answer, but there's no uncertainty. We know they're going to go up. Will your teenage children follow your advice? No. There's no uncertainty. We don't like the answer, but we know the answer. Will Amazon for Business take over this industry? Well, all of a sudden I just threw something at you that had some uncertainty, didn't I? You want to build scenarios where you have two things going. Number one, there is uncertainty. If you know the answer, are taxes going to go up? Yeah, there's an impact to you. It's high. There's not a lot of uncertainty. Just prepare for it. Shut up, quit whining, get a life. If it's low impact, low uncertainty, ignore it. The children will grow out of it. All right, my goal with my kids is I didn't want tattoos. I didn't want them to get anybody pregnant. And I didn't want to get them on drugs. Had a lot of nose rings and stuff like that, but all that stuff's removable. So I considered it a win. If it's high uncertainty, Amazon, and it's high impact to you, you put a scenario together. What's a scenario look like? It's very simple. Don't overcomplicate this. A scenario is a piece of paper, one side, maybe both sides, but that's all. The very top couple paragraphs say, just suppose X happens. Just suppose X happens. What are we going to do? You ask, how do I recognize that it's happening, and what do I put together? And you have, basically, you make up a story, put some imaginary details in it. You get your team together. My sales pitch to you is to sit down with the smart people in your company, go through this discussion, say, what do we need to build scenarios on? How do you recognize that it's happening? And you guys just, all you need is a list of bullet points. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And you can seal it up in an envelope on the front porch of Funk and Wagnalls until you need it. Somebody needs to own it. Back in Desert Storm 1, Norman Schwarzkopf was the owner of the scenario. He was a one-star. The U.S. military has over 1,000 scenarios that are owned by either colonels or one-star, even two-stars. The scenario of Iraq invading Kuwait was considered to be low risk. He maintained, part of his job in his command was to maintain all the standing orders and everything else, that if this occurred, all the orders were already written. They kept track of the readiness of the various troops in terms of deployment, so we could execute and move violently and quickly. Scenario planning was developed by Royal Dutch Shell and adopted by the U.S. military shortly after the Vietnam War. It's gotten a lot of traction in business to help you, because you can't stop all this crazy stuff going on, but you can react differently to it.